We are finally here, the beginning of another Orlando Magic season. Media Day is today. So how are we feeling about the Orlando Magic? It's time for the annual State of the Orlando Magic today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is September 29th. It will be that most beautiful day, September 30th, 2024, Media Day, and the official beginning of the Orlando Magic's 2024-2025 season. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, it's time to address the state of the Orlando Magic. We'll dive into what the Orlando Magic are hoping happens this year and the challenges of the next phase of this team's rebuild. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I wanted to start today's episode and this season talking about where we ended last season. And again, it's a little bit of conceit. I get it. It's a little bit of a gimmick to say this is the state of the Orlando Magic, because the state of the Orlando Magic is very good. But I want to take us back to May 5th. Not really even May 5th. I want to take us back to May 6th, the day after the Orlando Magic lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in Game 7. I was in Cleveland. I tried my best to get back to Orlando, did not get there in time for exit interview, so I had to watch them on delay on YouTube. But in Cleveland on May 5th, it was a despondent team, and rightfully so. The Magic had that lead in Game 7. They had a chance to advance the second round. I was all packed to go to Boston. They had all this opportunity in front of them. And they fell short. And as I've talked about at various points throughout this offseason, certainly after the Olympics, disappointment is part of the process. You're going to fall. You're going to fail. You're going to lose. And really, for the first time all season, the Magic fell short of something they aimed to accomplish. The Magic had this wildly successful 2024 season. But like all seasons except the one where you're lifting the golden trophy at the end of the season and there are no more basketball games, you're going to end in some form of disappointment. And the Magic were undoubtedly disappointed with how their magical, pun intended, season ended. But by the time they got back to Orlando on May 6th, or later May 5th, but by the time they spoke to the media on May 6th, the mood had noticeably changed. The Magic were now very optimistic, very hopeful. It was as if not that Game 7 didn't happen, but it certainly didn't feel like it was 24 hours before. This was the Magic team talking about the future. Optimistically talking about the future. There was no concern of major change. There was no there's certainly no feeling that this was the end for this group. Like, sure, maybe Markelle Fultz kind of understood that his time was coming to an end, but there was no sense that this was it. The 2024 season, their playoff trip, that was the first step on a journey. And you could tell by the way that the Magic spoke at exit interviews that they gained a lot from the season. They understood, how important home court advantage could be. They now understood what a playoff season looked like. And you could tell that the big takeaway was, not only can we do this again, but we can do better next time. We will do better next time. You want to know what the state of your team is? Listen to how they talk when it's over. Listen to how they reflect back on what they accomplished and what they feel they can do the next year. Everybody who followed this Magic team all of 2024 looks at that team and would agree with them. We're not done yet. This team is not done yet. This team has a lot more it can accomplish, and it's going to get a lot better. And the message, it seemed, that the players sent, and certainly the message that Jeff Weltman and management sent as they went through this critical offseason, is that they're not done growing either. The Magic, several Magic players laid out that goal plain and simple. We will hear them all lay out that goal once again on Monday morning, Monday afternoon at Media Day. The goal is to be a top 4 seed. The goal is to get home court advantage, something that costs the Magic. Game 7 at the Kia Center might have gone very differently. Being the 2 seed instead of the 5 seed might have gone very differently. The Magic were in position to do that. The Magic learned a lot of lessons about how to get their way through the season, about how important every game is and how thin the margin for error is at these high levels. And they were ready. If you would have told them that the season was starting May 10th, Wendell Carter might not have liked that because he had surgery. He needed surgery. But if you would have told them that the season was going to restart on May 10th or May 12th or June 1st, they would have been ready to go and eager to get going. They knew that there's obviously a lot of work to do in the intervening 4.5 months or nearly 5 months now to get ready for another season. You need that time off. But the Magic wanted it to come. The Magic wanted it to happen. They were ready to get going. And the Magic management, Jeff Weltman, said, go do it again. We believe you can do it again. We believe that this is the team that can do it again and get better. The Magic bet on themselves throughout the course of this rebuild. And at this moment of great success, the Magic bet on themselves again. That Paolo Banchero will go from all-star to superstar, or all-NBA player, however you want to characterize it. That Franz Wagner will go from a high-level role player, from young second star to all-star. That Wendell Carter will bounce back from an injury-plagued season. That Jalen Suggs can expand his game into playmaking as much as it can expand into being the 3-and-D shooter that he was last year. That the bench can run things back, that their emphasis on length and defense will be an identity that holds true year after year after year and is a central part of the team's identity. The Magic bet on themselves, and in life, generally, that is a good bet. You are usually a good judge of whether you can accomplish something. That doesn't mean it's not full of risks, and we'll talk about those risks. But the Magic said, we were successful last year. We are very young. Paolo's 21, Franz is 22, Jalen Suggs is 22, 23. We are very young. Add the right veteran that fills some of our needs, but doubles down on our strengths in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And let's see how far we can take this thing. What the Magic have done is they looked at their 2024 season with a lot of pride, obviously. But they looked at their 2024 season not only as a success, but a success that they can repeat over and over and over again. And a success that's not just going to repeat, but carry them forward. We are entering a new phase of this rebuild. And this phase, no doubt, is going to be challenging. There are going to be a lot of missteps and a lot of pratfalls and a lot of failures as the Magic continue to evolve. We'll talk about some of those coming up here in a minute. But the Magic know that everything starts with their identity, with who they are and what they're building internally. We could talk all we want about the moves the Magic did or did not do this offseason with all the power and all the cap room that they had. We can talk all we want about that. But at the end of the day, one thing truly matters in taking this Magic team from where they're at, and that's the nice group of young teams trying to fight their way in to the contending group that everyone recognizes. And that's Paolo Banchero's development. That's Franz Wagner's development. That's, at this point, Jalen Suggs' development. All of that is what the Magic are betting on. And they weren't going to get in the way of that. But that is the challenge. Because now you're betting a lot on a lot of very young players while the pressure to win increases. The Orlando Magic have entered a new phase of this rebuild. And there is a big challenge ahead. We're going to talk about how the Magic balance this challenge and what that means for the 2025 season coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, I see you over there. You can start this season with a big return on FanDuel because you're not seeing a lot of those on kickoffs in the NFL anymore. FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel has so many great NBA offers, too, to get you ready for the NBA season. You can bet on the Orlando Magic and their over-under of 45.5 wins. You can bet the Magic to win the Southeast Division, if that still matters. They're still -140 to win the Southeast Division. You can even bet on the Magic's opening night game already against the Miami Heat. Magic 1-point dogs, 1-point underdogs against the Miami Heat with an over-under of 210.5. You can get in on that action already at FanDuel. And with FanDuel, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and with Media Day starting on Monday, the NBA offseason is officially over. Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The state of the Orlando Magic is very, very strong. Let's make that very clear. For the first time in a dozen years, the Orlando Magic not only are a playoff team, but have a playoff future. If you listen to this podcast for a long time, you've probably heard me say, I don't think you're stuck until you don't have a way forward. That's not the issue for this Magic team anymore. They have a way forward, and very clearly it's on the backs of their young players. Paolo Banchero in his third year of 21, turning 22 very soon years old. Franz Wagner in his fourth year now on a max contract. He's a max level player. The Magic believe that if you don't think he's there now, he's going to get there very soon. On the backs of this young core that the Magic have built around and have decided this is their future. But that's still the struggle. The Magic made the playoffs last year. And very clearly, everyone on the roster has big ambitions. It's one thing to say we're going to make the playoffs. Making the playoffs is difficult. Don't get it wrong. But it's a different challenge than the ambitions the Magic have now. The Magic are saying publicly, loudly, we believe we can win home court advantage. Paolo Banchero says he believes they can challenge the Boston Celtics, that they can challenge the teams at the top of the league, and that everyone is missing out by not talking about the Orlando Magic among the best teams in the Eastern Conference. That's the thing that the Magic have to prove this year, and that they're a young team that's going to learn how to do this. But that's the rub. They still have a lot to learn. And if you are going to frame the season as the Magic trying to win home court advantage, trying to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. If that's how you're going to judge the season, then you are rightfully upset that the Magic did not address a lot of those needs. We exited the playoffs. I know I sat here and said the biggest need that I saw from this Magic team is a lack of playmaking. They need someone to get Paolo Banchero some easy shots, to get Franz Wagner an easy shot, to ease that playmaking burden. Corey Joseph is going to be a really valuable player. He ain't that. He is not that. The Magic are relying on Jalen Suggs, who was the nominal point guard last year, successfully, might I add. Maybe not so much in the playoffs, but certainly during the regular season. They're relying on Jalen Suggs to take a leap. They're relying on Anthony Black and Cole Anthony to platoon that role. For Franz Wagner to increase his playmaking duties. And yes, for Paolo Banchero to increase his. If the Magic, a week after they lost their playoff series, Paolo Banchero said, we need a table setter, the Magic did not listen to their star and get that. At least not that we can see on the roster. Maybe there's something we don't know from mini camps and pickup runs. The Magic did not spend this summer looking at immediate needs. And so it leads me to believe that while yes, winning is important, we should expect the Magic to make the playoffs, that they still have a different goal in mind. That while the Magic have entered a new phase of their rebuild where there are expectations to produce results. Again, don't get it twisted. The Magic missing the playoffs is a monumental failure. That is the level that we're at. The floor for this team is the playoffs. And missing the playoffs, even if they're the 7-8 and they lose in the play-in tournament, is an unacceptable outcome for this team. This is a team that has shown itself capable of navigating a season, getting to a 7-game series, winning in a 7-game series. And barring a catastrophic injury, the Magic should be in that field of 8 in the Eastern Conference. They are a top 8 team in the Eastern Conference. I think a lot of Magic fans would argue they're clearly a top 6 team and might be disappointed if they're in the play-in tournament at all. And I think that's a fair thing to say and a fair thing to talk about as well. But the Magic obviously didn't put all their eggs in that basket. The Magic, added a really good veteran player in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to continue to raise the team's floor. But what this season is about determining how close to the ceiling they are. And a lot of that is still about development. It's still about allowing Paolo Banchero to make mistakes, to be in this quasi-uncomfortable role as a playmaker and see how far he can take it and how far he can take his abilities. The Magic, I think, believe he not that he can average a triple-double, but he can be a regular triple-double player. I certainly believe that he can get closer to that level. He led the team in assists last year, like a little bit more than 5 per game. The Magic are taking a by-committee approach to things, which has been what they've been about under Jamal Mosley. But it's about how much better these players get. And knowing how young Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs are, the Magic, it seems, don't want to put them in a box. They don't want to narrowly define them by one role or one action or one activity. They're trying to let their games be expansive. And yes, that sometimes means they'll fail. That sometimes means they will fall short or they will not do what they need to do. And it might cost the Magic a win here or there. And a win here or there is the difference between the 3 seed and the 7 seed. I want that to be very clear. The Magic did not build a roster or attack this offseason with the idea that 2025 is the season that matters. And so for the first time this season, I'm going to tell you this season is not entirely about this season. Look, the Magic need to win. The Magic need to be in the playoffs. They need to be in a 7-game series again. They need a different matchup. Give them a Joel Embiid. Let them try and figure out if they can do to Donovan Mitchell and Cleveland what to Joel Embiid and the Sixers. That is a different challenge. Give them a Giannis. Donovan Mitchell's an all-NBA type player. I don't want to take anything away from him. But give us an MVP candidate and let's see how the Magic stack up. Look, the Cavs wanted the Magic because of their inexperience. The Magic wanted the Cavs because that was probably the most favorable matchup because they don't have a super duper star. They don't have a Tatum. They don't have a Giannis. They don't have a Joel Embiid. The Magic still have a lot to prove. And we can't take one playoff series, as promising as it was, as gospel of what this team is or where this team's ceiling is. This season for the Orlando Magic is truly about two things. The first is figuring out how close to the ceiling we are. And again, maybe that ceiling is they are a top seed in the East. I am giving a bit of a pessimist view, but the Magic can be the 2 seed in the East. They can compete with those top teams in the league. And it banks on how good Paolo Banchero is. This stuff is simple, guys. The Magic are going to go as far as Paolo Banchero can take him. Give him all the help, give him all the support, give him all the space that he needs. Figure out what he needs and what that balance is. But Paolo and how good he is, if he is an all-NBA player, the Magic will be competing for championships. If he's what he is now, the Magic are still a playoff team every year. But their ceiling looks a little lower, and that may necessitate doing something else. The second thing this season is about is doing it all again. And I think a lot of us feel comfortable that the Magic can be what they were last year. But the question is last year a high watermark, or is that a year subject to variance? And the Magic would tell you that, no, we had a really bad January and December. If we would have done better there, we were the 2 seed. I would agree with that assessment. The Magic could very easily argue that they underachieved last year, that they were a lot better than their record and a lot better than where they finished. But the Magic also have to prove themselves more against better teams. They had the worst record among playoff teams against teams with records above 500. They had the second worst road record among playoff teams in the league. The Magic have to continue to prove themselves and continue to mature. And that's, to me, more about what this season is about than where they finish. I think that the Magic are a better team today than they were at the end of the season last year. I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a humongous addition, and an addition that is big in ways that we don't yet understand. He's very, very good, and he's going to help this team and give them spacing and add to this team in some immeasurable ways. I also think that Paolo Banchero is going to be a lot better this year. I think a leap is coming from Paolo Banchero. And same thing with Franz. I think Franz will be better this year. I think his shooting will come back a little bit. I'm not saying 34, 35% again, but 32, 33 would go a long way for him. I think this team is better. But I also think it's very possible that they go from 47 to 45 wins and are sitting in the 6th seed. And that might still be a successful season. Don't get it wrong. This is going to be very intense competition, a very intense 7 months coming up before we get to May. But the Magic can accomplish a lot and can learn a lot to prepare them for that next move, for the next thing that will get them where they want to be. And obviously, the big news of the NBA this weekend was the Minnesota Timberwolves trading Karl Anthony Towns. And that move teaches the Orlando Magic a lot. We'll go over that trade and what it means for the Magic coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Hey, friends, it's the busy time here in Central Florida. We got college football with UCF. Let's not talk about Saturday's game. We've got Orlando City and Orlando Pride getting ready for the playoffs. The Orlando Pride hosting a playoff game for the first time in franchise history. And, of course, the Orlando Solar Bears and Orlando Magic ready to get going at the Kia Center. It is that time of the year to start making sure you have tickets to the big game and are able to go see your Orlando Magic play. Gametime has so many great features to make sure that you get your ticket to the game or to really any event, concert, theater, shows, whatever is going on in Central Florida or wherever you are. Gametime even has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. When it comes to Gametime, you can already get tickets to the Orlando Magic's preseason opener against the New Orleans Pelicans. I've got the Gametime app loaded here. I don't know if you could see that well on my phone if you're watching on YouTube, but they've got all the seats arranged with super deals, with discounts, hot deals with the cheapest tickets. You can even get the panoramic view of where your seats are so you know exactly what the court's going to look like when you get to the Kia Center next Friday. And that's right. 1 week from Friday is the first Magic preseason game against the New Orleans Pelicans. So a lot to get excited about. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. We would be remiss, though, if we did not talk about the state of the Orlando Magic without talking about not necessarily opportunities missed, because I don't think there are many opportunities missed this summer, but talking about that next phase. The Orlando Magic are capped out. They are going to be over the salary cap for the foreseeable future. Even before we get to Jalen Suggs' new contract next year, the Magic are capped out. They are over the cap for next year already. With the Franz Wagner contract and all that stuff. That's going to be the reality. So the only way the Magic are going to make significant moves is via trades. And obviously we had a major trade this weekend with the Knicks and Timberwolves swapping Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns. On a Magic basis, obviously this makes the Knicks that much more dangerous. We talked with Locked On Knicks a few weeks ago, and I expressed my big concern with the Knicks was I don't trust Mitchell Robinson to be available for 60 games. They're going to have some center issues, and that could derail their season. Well, they figured that out. They got Karl-Anthony Towns, and they continue to have an all-in summer. Really, this was the only move for the Knicks to make because the Knicks gave up considerable draft assets to get Mikal Bridges. And essentially, that was their signal. We're in it to win it. We're winning a title, or not necessarily going bust, but they pushed all their chips, a lot of their chips to the center of the table. I don't know. They obviously didn't push all their chips because they still got Karl-Anthony Towns, but they pushed a lot of chips to the middle of the table to put themselves in a position to win a title. And to go through a season without a starting center for 2 months was not a scenario they were willing to take. I'm not going to break down the Timberwolves side. You can listen to Locked On Timberwolves for that. You can listen to Locked On Knicks for their breakdown of this trade as well. But there is an important lesson there because the Knicks were all in, somewhat chasing their losses to some extent. And the Magic obviously were not ready to go all in this summer. They were not ready to expend their assets. And because the Knicks spent 5 first-round picks to go get Mikal Bridges, the Magic are going to have to face a similar deal where they spend their draft assets. And look, they have all of their own draft picks. They don't have a lot of other teams' draft picks. They got the Denver pick this year coming to them. But that's going to run out very quickly. And it's going to be a late pick. And so the Magic, it feels like, have one bite at this apple. And so if you're curious, why did the Magic chase after DeJounte Murray, who cost 2 first-round picks, a player coming off his rookie, off a rookie contract, or a player on his rookie contract in his second year, as well as a rotation player? If you're curious why the Magic didn't do that, it's A, like I said earlier, they want to give Paolo and Franz the ability to continue to explore and not put a ceiling on their roles or put a cap on their roles or put guardrails on their roles. They want them to go out there, explore the limits of their games, and make some mistakes. They weren't ready to push those chips in and expend what draft assets they have on that kind of a player. Not yet, at least. But clearly that time's coming. The Knicks felt that time was now. They pushed their chips in. They're all in on the season. You know, you see these teams that are at the top of the league, they give up their draft picks. And the Magic, knowing that they will probably be going after a lot of the same players that the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Houston Rockets, the San Antonio Spurs, even the Utah Jazz, who have a lot of draft assets, going after the same or similar players, the Magic really only have one shot at it, because their draft stash isn't going to beat those teams' draft stashes. The Magic are like in the second tier of draft players. And so obviously the cap trade is about a team that's all in. The Knicks need to win a title in the next 3 years. The Magic's window is looking like 4 or 5 years. Like, again, they're looking 2028, 2029, 2030 is when they'll be very seriously competing for a title. And again, that could open a whole lot quicker depending on how much better Paolo Banchero is. But the Magic weren't ready to push those chips in. They're keeping those in reserve for when they understand better the limits of their team and what could help take them over the top. Because again, this season is about building internally still. It's not about the external stuff. It's not about what this team doesn't have yet. It's about figuring out what this team still has. It's uncomfortable because we're coming off a season where the Magic went to the playoffs, got to a game 7, could have very easily been in the second round. And we learned so much. Do not get it wrong. That was my big goal last year. Get to the playoffs, learn about this team. We're still learning about this team. We're still, we know things. Obviously, we know the shooting. We know the playmaking. We know a lot about this team. But we're still learning about this team because they're so young and still able to get so much better. And the Magic weren't going to be enticed by the shiny ball and the shiny object and say, we need to be better now. They understand we will get better naturally. There might be a hiccup. There might be a step back. And when that happens, you address it. If, Jeff Weltman said it, continuity only works if you're winning. Well, if the Magic are the 6 seed or the 5 seed again, that's going to be a hint to them that, this continuity thing, I think we've reached our limit. We've reached our ceiling a little bit. And now we got to figure out how to get above it, beyond it, to break through it. But the Magic, I think, saw no reason not to keep letting this team incubate. For as much as this is a winning team, for as much as this is a team that is capable of winning at a very high level, this is still a young team figuring this thing out, figuring this league out. And this year, figuring out how to do it all again and be consistent. Before we get to Media Day, then, let me say this. I am very excited for this season. I am very optimistic about this season and what it can bring. It may not give the results that Magic fans want. It may be another first-round loss. It may be a lower seed. It may be a few fewer wins. It won't be that many. This is still like a 45-win team at worst. This is still a 45-win team at worst. But this is going to be a fun season. It's going to be a season, again, of growth, of understanding, of learning. It's going to be a season that we're going to remember as well. Maybe not in the same way as last season, but a season that's going to bring a lot of fun. And personally, I think this has been one of the most anticipated seasons for the Magic in a very, very long time. Last season was very anticipated. To have back-to-back seasons where everyone just cannot wait for Magic basketball, especially after the last decade, is so exciting and so thrilling. And this team will give you a reason to watch and give you a reason to believe. But remember, this is a multi-year journey. This is a journey that's going to take years to get where we ultimately want to go. But the truth is, we will look back at last season. We will look back at this season as the beginning steps or the intermediate steps even of that journey at worst. Because this team has the capability to not only get better internally, but continue to add and get better. And this season is going to be a big, big step in that process. I cannot wait to get started. And that's where I will leave you today, because the state of the Orlando Magic is so strong. as Jeff Weltman loves to say, today is a great day to be a Magic fan. And if you're not a Magic fan yet, welcome to Locked On Magic. Jump on the bandwagon because this is going to be a fun ride for the next 7 months. I want to thank you for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them based on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also find us on YouTube if you want to watch the show and interact with us there. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Like I mentioned last week, we will be doing a live show next Monday at, I believe I scheduled it for, let me just make sure I wrote down my time. We will be doing a live show next Sunday at 7 p.m. That's a live show next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time to recap the Magic's first preseason game against New Orleans Pelicans. The games are going to start coming fast, so we'll get to that next Monday. Obviously, though, tomorrow's episode, all about Media Day, expectations, what the players had to say. We'll get to all that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. Now that you're done listening to Locked On Magic, though, you can check out the Locked On NBA podcast where local experts keep you informed daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the season. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Media Day is finally here. The season is finally here. I want to thank you all preemptively for joining us on this wonderful journey on Locked On Magic. Until tomorrow, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic.